everyone, and welcome. Some of the stories we have for you right now. The U.S. puts the brakes temporarily to auto sector tariffs.
Why are our Michigan jobs in Canada? And that's what the president's going to address.
The painful road ahead and what was discussed in a call between Justin Trudeau and Donald Trump.
The light's starting to dim again with the tariffs, and we don't know what's going to happen.
How Canadian auto workers are reacting to the brief reprieve.
Now, Peel Regional Police are investigating
an alleged sexual assault involving 8 former Ontario Hockey League players.
He was screaming out loud, like, help me, call 911.
Plus, what's behind a rash of shootings linked to the tow truck industry?
CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo.
Get ready for more tariff whiplash. The auto sector is getting a 1-month reprieve. Maybe it was the markets tanking or pressure from business leaders to dial down the little disturbance, as Donald Trump called it during his address to Congress last night. Today, the Commerce Secretary went into spin mode, and there was a phone call between Justin Trudeau and Donald Trump, accompanied by his posse, the Vice President and the Commerce Secretary. CTV senior political correspondent Mike Locatier is here to start us off. Okay, Mike, where do we begin? Let's start with that phone call.
Yeah, so Sandy, here's what we know about it. It lasted about 50 minutes, and it ended in a friendly manner, according to President Trump. Now, it was a conversation between the Prime Minister, Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. And it appears there has been some progress.
We are going to give a 1-month exemption on any autos coming through USMCA.
That carve-out was driven by a call Trump had with the heads of Stellantis, GM, and Ford. Other reciprocal tariffs are still scheduled to go into effect on April 2nd. But Ontario's premier doesn't want a reprieve. He wants tariffs removed.
Spoke to the Prime Minister earlier. We're on the same page, 0 tariffs, and we are not going to budge. We aren't going to buckle down. Let's move forward to the USMCA deal or CUSMA deal or NAFTA, whatever you want to call it, and let's start moving forward. But we will not budge, 0 tariffs, and that's it.
Ford believes the pause for the auto sector came from a push by U.S. business leaders.
They're voicing their opinion. They're frustrated. The CEOs, the market tanked. That's what really caught his attention.
In a post on his social media, President Trump said the flow of fentanyl from Canada remains the reason for the tariffs. He added Trudeau told him it's gotten better. But Trump responded, quote, that's not good enough.
We need to see the Canadians and Mexicans put long-lasting protections in to protect America. Not this, oh, I'm doing a lot of work for the last 3 weeks. Give me a break.
While there is a carve-out for autos, 25% tariffs on all other imports and 10% taxes on energy remain. Danielle Smith has ruled out an export tax to make Alberta oil even more expensive for Americans, focusing instead on selling to other markets.
So until our U.S. friends come back to reality, we will focus on efforts and financial means to export one of the largest oil and gas deposits in the world elsewhere.
Now let's go back to that phone call for just a second. According to Trump's social media post, the president found it odd that Trudeau wasn't able to tell him when the next federal election would be held. Trump posted that Trudeau was using this issue to stay in power. Still, the Prime Minister's office says both countries will continue to remain in contact throughout the day. Sandy?
Yeah, clear he doesn't understand how the parliamentary system works. Okay, Mike, thanks so much. Now, we are tracking the fallout and response as Canadians deal with all this uncertainty and anxiety. Donald Trump's reprieve for the auto sector certainly puts a pause to the immediate pain. CTV's Heather Wright joins us from the Ford plant in Oakville, Ontario. And Heather, just a brief reprieve. What's been the reaction to it so far?
Well, workers, Sandy, are saying that this really isn't much of a reprieve at all because that cloud of uncertainty remains. They say, you know, you can't make life decisions. Nobody is making big decisions in a 30-day window. And they also tell me that this has been a challenging few years for the auto industry in this country, dealing with things like the Ambassador Bridge shutdown, the pandemic. They were hoping that things were getting better, but now there's this looming uncertainty with the tariffs. Here's what one worker told me a little while ago.
So lots of instability. Our members have already been reeling from constant layoffs over the last few years due to the economy, COVID, semiconductors and everything else. We were kind of hoping we were getting to the end of the tunnel. We could see a light, but now the light's starting to dim again with the tariffs, and we don't know what's going to happen.
Well, Heather, you talk about the uncertainty and the toll it's taking on workers in the industry. What about their families?
Well, it's really entire families and whole communities. If you think about where a lot of these assembly plants are located here in Canada, but specifically in Ontario, you know, these are communities that are built around those facilities and the spin-off industries that are supported by those plants. And so not only are there entire families that are employed in the auto industry, there are also concerns that if mass layoffs come, what will happen to the outside community? People not going to the movies, not eating out, not buying that new car. And so the concern is very real. People are taking this 30-day reprieve as something, but still they don't know what's going to happen in the next few months.
That is
Sandy.
for sure. Okay. Heather in Oakville. Heather, thank you. Now, as we heard in Mike's story, the Americans keep insisting the tariffs are in place because Canada and Mexico are not doing enough to stem the flow of fentanyl over the border. But the U.S. numbers don't jive with ours. CTV's Judy Tran is in Washington working on this angle. Okay, Judy, once again, Trump's press secretary was pushing the American point of view. Not quite right, is it?
Well, it's not clear where the White House is getting its data from, but we do know that the Trump administration may be adding on numbers from drug raids conducted in American cities in U.S. states that are near the Canadian border, where the origin of the drugs are not known. Take a listen to Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary. Her claims are exaggerated.
Last fiscal year alone, there was enough fentanyl seized to kill 4.8 billion people. And that number is up 2,050% from 2023, the year before. So there's been more than a 2,000% increase in illegal fentanyl seizure at the northern border. Why? Because Canada is allowing that fentanyl to come to the United States.
Well, Judy, at this point, what else can we do to convince them that they're wrong?
It's not clear because the Canadian officials are using U.S. data from the Customs and Border Protection Agency of the Americans. It shows that there's less fentanyl going in, not more. Now, let me show you what information Canada's Public Safety Minister presented to the White House officials last week. Between last July and January, 59 pounds of fentanyl was seized at the northern border compared to 61,900 pounds seized at the border with Mexico. In those 6 months, the amount of drugs seized went down 97%. Now, then in a recent targeted operation, the RCMP found more than 100 pounds of fentanyl and more than 15,000 synthetic opioid pills and arrested more than 500 people. Proof, the Prime Minister says, that Canada is doing its part to fight the scourge of fentanyl.
Legal pretext your government is using to bring in these tariffs is that Canada is apparently unwilling to help in the fight against illegal fentanyl. Well, that is totally false.
Now, Canada has already invested $1.3 billion in increasing border security. The number of illegal migration has dropped 90% since 6 months ago. Now, the other thing that is happening is that we've leased 4 Black Hawk helicopters and more than 100 drones are in the air doing surveillance right now, Sandy. So a lot is being done.
Right, for sure. Okay, Judy, thank you. Now, a major American whiskey maker accused some Canadian provinces of a, quote, disproportionate response after they stopped selling American liquor. The CEO of Brown-Forman, which makes Jack Daniels, said, quote, that's worse than a tariff because it's literally taking your sales away, completely removing our products from the shelves. Several provinces took American alcohol off store shelves yesterday as part of the retaliation against Donald Trump's tariffs. NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman has spoken up, saying Trump's tariffs will be painful to the league if they push the Canadian dollar down.
It will make it more difficult and more painful. We have revenue sharing, but a lot of our Canadian clubs do quite well. But that's going to be impacted by what happens with the Canadian dollar.
So far, the Canadian dollar has remained relatively steady. 7 of the 32 NHL teams are in Canada and account for 25% of the league's revenue. Another side effect to tariffs: travel to the U.S. We are 1 week away from spring break for many school districts in Canada. It's a time when Canadians who can go south. But the Canada-U.S. trade war is changing plans, with many wanting to send a message to the White House. CTV's Andrew Johnson is on this story. And Andrew, any idea how widespread this form of protest is?
Well, Sandy, one travel agency says they've never seen anything like it. A sudden plunge in U.S. bookings and a surge in cancellations. People like one Ontario family who say they just can't stomach heading to the States right now. The Gleisers are heading to Mexico next week instead. They had been planning to visit Myrtle Beach, an epic March break road trip with several other families. But they decided to cancel, even when it meant losing their deposits over Donald Trump's tactics.
What's more upsetting is this constant threat of Canada becoming a 51st state. That's something we don't agree with, that we would not want to see happen. So anything that we can do to support Canada and avoid supporting the United States is what we're doing right now.
We do not like his disrespect for Canada, for our Prime Minister, for our resources, all these claims, he doesn't need what we have. It just is, it really hurts me as a Canadian.
The Gleiser family is far from alone. Travel agents are reporting a year-over-year 40% decline in bookings to U.S. destinations for the month of February, and travelers who are feeling betrayed.
Definitely emotional. A lot of sentiment towards feeling that trust has been broken now, and they just really want to travel anywhere but the U.S. This is such a fluid situation. We've never seen anything like this.
As well as March break, Flight Centre says the phenomenon is spilling into cruise ship season. Canadians are canceling non-refundable Alaska cruises, potentially losing thousands to stand up for their country. Sandy.
Andrew, thank you. Standing up for his country is costing Volodymyr Zelensky. Washington has now suspended intelligence sharing with Kyiv, a new escalation in the strained relations between the Trump administration and Ukraine.
We have taken a step back and are pausing and reviewing all aspects of this relationship.
The cutoff comes after the U.S. also suspended military aid following a tense clash between Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky in the Oval Office last Friday. Ukraine's president says he is ready for peace talks and open to a minerals deal with the U.S. Donald Trump suffered a legal setback in one of the first cases to make it to the Supreme Court, involving his efforts to shrink government spending. The justices voted 5-4 to deny Trump's emergency request to avoid paying nearly $2 billion in foreign aid for work already completed by nonprofit groups and businesses. The matter may not be over, as the ruling called for a lower court judge to clarify an order calling for the funding to be released. Well, a possible turf war is brewing in Toronto. It involves the tow truck industry. Police are investigating after a pair of shootings, the most recent at a gas station last night. CTV's Allison Hurst explains.
While in Car Wash Bay 4 at this gas station in Scarborough, shots were fired, hitting a tow truck driver.
They came out of nowhere, tried to attack him. When he was running, they shot him in the back. I think that happened.
Arun Rajiv was working in the office at about 11:20 p.m.
What did you hear? What did it sound like?
It sounded like continuous rounds, like not a pistol.
Bang, bang, bang?
Yeah, continuous, like, yeah.
Police say a man in his 20s was hit, suffering non-life-threatening injuries.
When I was applying pressure on it, I just said him, relax, the cops are on the way. I asked him, who shot you? Why did they shoot you? He said he don't know anything.
Police say the suspect fled in a vehicle.
I listened to a car going outside, didn't see anything.
Across town, just an hour before a shooting at this tow truck yard. The door windows smashed out, held closed by cardboard boxes, with other bullet holes in the entry roof. Police say 2 people were shot, a man in his 50s taken to hospital with life-threatening injuries, and another in his 20s.
It's been an ongoing battle, of course, with peaks of violence, and this is one of those peaks.
Toronto police say there have been 13 tow truck-related shooting incidents already this year.
Ontario's been trying to regulate this industry but it's been a very difficult thing for them to regulate and really control.
In January, there were 3 tow truck-related shootings in Scarborough in just over 24 hours. The brother of one of the drivers spoke to CTV News, saying luckily he was wearing a bulletproof vest.
And so nobody should have to go to work every day and fear for their life and have to wear a bulletproof vest just to go do your job. There's something definitely wrong with that.
The president of the Professional Towing Association of Ontario, Gary Vanden Heuvel, says this is unheard of in most of the province.
The majority of the towing industry, they take on the regulations, whether they like it or not. They're there, they take them on, they accept it, and they do their very best to follow the rules. This is just an outside sanction from within our industry that don't really care.
Police have not said whether the 2 shootings last night are connected in any way. Alison Hurst, CTV News, Toronto.
No one was hurt in a massive 3-alarm early morning fire in Toronto's Yorkville area.
There was approximately 6 new buildings under construction that were fully involved. As a result, it spread to buildings adjacent to that, and the radiant heat melted and broke windows across the street, as well as did some damage to the cars in front of the buildings.
Fire crews were confronted with heavy smoke and flames. Officials say it likely started at a home under construction, adding the property damage is estimated to be in the millions. Coming up, new developments in an alleged sexual assault case.
I hope one day that I can find peace.
Police confirm an open investigation into a group of former Ontario Hockey League players. Our next story contains allegations of sexual assault involving 8 former Ontario Hockey League players with the Mississauga Steelheads. Now, it happened 11 years ago. The Special Victims Unit with Peel Regional Police is investigating. TSN's Rick Westhead broke this story and joins me now. Okay, Rick, remind us about this story.
Well, in October, we reported on the allegations made by a woman we referred to as Anne-Marie, her middle name, against these former players. She says that in 2014, she had a casual relationship with a 19-year-old player on the Steelheads, and he invited her over to watch television with a few teammates. She says she went and in the course of the evening was sexually assaulted by 8 players with the Steelheads. She says she did not report that to police until early in 2024, and when she did, she went to 3 different police departments and was not able to make a claim, a report with any of them.
So now they are taking it seriously and they are investigating.
Right, so fast forward 4 months from our original reporting,
right,
and now Peel Regional Police are investigating.
Okay, this brings to mind the case of the World Junior Hockey Team. Where does that stand?
Well, we've had months of pre-trial hearings in London, Ontario, hearing evidence that we can't report on until the trial's over. But we're very close to the trial. It actually begins in 6 weeks on April 22nd with jury selection. So we're getting much closer to that as well.
Okay. Rick, thank you so much, as always. Still ahead, examining the battle over the border. The facts on fentanyl and what's happening along the U.S.-Manitoba border. As you know, Donald Trump is using fentanyl to justify his tariffs, and Canadian officials have been jumping through hoops to demonstrate our commitment in the fight against the deadly opioid. We wanted to get an idea of what some small border towns are doing and sent CTV's Alex Carpa to check out the U.S.-Manitoba border. And Alex, what did you find?
Sandy, I'm in the town of Gretna, Manitoba, a population of about 500 people, and it sits right along the Canada-U.S. border, and the border itself is just beyond the hill that you can see behind me. To the naked eye, it's a vast expanse of land stretching hundreds of kilometers. From what I've seen, there are cameras set up along the border. RCMP vehicles are monitoring around the border, and people here tell me they have seen the Black Hawk helicopter that Canada announced as part of enhanced patrols fly in the area. This after President Donald Trump's demands to beef up the border with what Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says are exaggerated claims about fentanyl smuggling. And the people living in the area had some strong words about Canada-U.S. relations right now.
It makes me furious. As I said, I'd be willing to give up my life for my country rather than live under the domination of somebody like that. Just no way. And I think the majority of Canadians would feel the same way.
Visiting several towns in the area, those living right along the border say the Trump tariffs will have a severe and profound impact on small town businesses as costs for imports and exports will rise. Sandy?
Alex in Manitoba. When it comes to fishing tales, it's hard to top this massive unexpected catch. All right, now you can't really tell, but this is a 900-pound dolphin. It jumped into the boat during a friend's fishing trip in New Zealand. The mammal wasn't hurt, that's good to know, but there was some damage to the vessel and fishing rods were snapped. Conservation workers helped return the big dolphin back to the ocean. All is good. After the break, the search for the maple leaf when buying Canadian, putting mislabeled products under the microscope. Canadians are keeping a keen eye on food labels, but in many cases it can be challenging to figure out where things are made. Now, Canada's Food Inspection Agency says it's receiving complaints about mislabeling. CTV's Alison Bamford in Saskatoon, and on this story for us. And Alison, what did you learn?
Sandy, a few months ago, most Canadians might not have cared or even known if they bought a bag of apples and the shelf sign said product of Canada, but the little sticker on them said made in the USA. Well, now that little mix-up is getting noticed. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency is fielding an increase in complaints about items mislabeled as products of Canada or missing information about their country of origin altogether. Mistakes that are popping up across the country. These American apples incorrectly labeled in Vancouver as a product of Canada, and in Toronto, U.S. carrots were the culprit. The CFIA says the rash of complaints has come in the last few months as the demand for Canadian products ramps up. A sentiment on the minds of shoppers at this Saskatoon grocery store.
I went to because it's Canadian. They have everything Canadian marked as well, so I found it pretty easy to do. Maybe added an extra 5 minutes of turning over a few products.
I've been avoiding the American stuff naturally.
Well, I look at labels a lot, and I did before, but now even more so.
Identifying true Canadian products can be tough, especially for local retailers helping the cause.
What we found out is you have to be pretty careful about what you label as a Made in Canada product. There's pretty strict rules and regulations on that.
It's hard to say if the Buy Canadian movement will become a permanent shift, but the people we spoke to say the trade war is forcing them to do something they should have done a long time ago. Sandy?
Thanks, Alison. CTV National News will continue to follow every changing detail in this ongoing trade war. I'm Sandy Ronaldo. Good night for now. Stay strong.